Welcome along. We're talking GAA on this Tuesday. So, as ever, our GAA coverage in the podcast with thanks to AIB at the heart of Gaelic games across club and county. And in 2025, they are celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. And with this year's championship shaping up to be one of the most open and competitive in years, AIB more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. You can check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more. So we had a sort of strange predicament here in the show in that I thought to myself, we need some, a few All-Ireland medals on as part of the punditry team. And I got on to none other than Tomás Ó Sé. I said, Tomás, we'd love to have you. He said, I'd like to do it. He said, I'm managing the Kerry under-20s and I'm going to keep the head down just until that's all done. So, I wanted to Tomás and the 20s to do well, but equally I knew once they were knocked out, he could come on the podcast. So it was a tricky one for me. Tomás, sadly, there was knockout semi-final stage against Tyrone at the weekend. So you're stuck with us now. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, you were cute enough as well to stay away from me for the first week after that. So thanks on that as well. Yeah, we had a good season. We had a good season. It's something I've enjoyed now the last number of years. And we came up against Tyrone, who were a very, very good team. But we actually they knocked us out last year as well. Beat us by 6 last year, beat us by 6 this year. And 2 games couldn't have been more different. And last year, we probably should have been beaten by more. And this year, we shouldn't have been beaten by 6, in my opinion. But as the man says, we had enough ball to win 2 games. However, Tyrone were that more clinical up front. So best of luck to them.
You and Tyrone, eh? Bit of pain over the years.
I thought when I was finished playing that was it. And I thought with that great Tyrone team. But I tell you, there's something a move above there, Joe. They're doing very well at underage level. They're doing very well at schools level. But key to the whole thing, you can do well at minor level and you can do well at schools level. I don't think that has a major impact on senior level. I think it's the 20s. If you get 3 or 4 of those fellas, and they're already getting them up along, the young Canavans, they're getting them. So I do think in the next 3 or 4 years, Tyrone will have an awful amount. I'd say 5, 6, 7 players from the last 2 or 3 under 20 teams, which will give them a good backbone because you can tell that the players involved, that McElhone lad, McCullough, they have a bit of character, they have a bit about them. They're not just good footballers, there's a bit of stuff in them as well, which augurs well for them.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, underage grades, whereby ultimately, as much as people in the county and you, the manager in particular, would take a pride in winning an under-20 All-Ireland or a minor All-Ireland, there's probably an argument like with the long term, geez, I'd rather a kind of average enough minor team with 2 stars that are going to come through for me senior level, as opposed to an All-Ireland winning underage team with 15 kind of 7 out of 10 types. That's the balance which is there.
Yeah, it's like, I don't like it because I'm involved as manager that they're feeders for seniors. What can we get and how can we develop players for seniors? And I'm sure if you ask the same to any minor manager, they're the exact same. You want to win and you want to do well. And unfortunately, I don't like... It is like in my time, I don't think we won under 20s in 95 or under 21s at the time, 95, 96. 97 we were beaten in a semi-final, 98 we won it again, 99 we were beaten in a final, and those 5 years backboned the noughties, and that was basically it. All of those teams, Darragh Shade, O'Kineda, all of them came from 95, 96. Then you had myself, Mike McCarthy, Mike Frank, Aidan. You had a pile of players come from the other latter years. So after that, we weren't winning much, but you were still picking up the Tommy Walshes, you were still picking up the Gooches, you were still picking up the Marks, the Declans, and it didn't impact on us. So I don't think, well, in Kerry, it's been so long. I think 98 is the last time they won an under-20 All-Ireland, and that was pissing off this year now. It's not that we wanted to win it, but I personally wanted to get over. We knew that the Ulster teams were coming down the tracks, and I wanted to get over that on a personal level. But unfortunately, we're not to be. But yeah, I think there's an amount of players coming, Joe. But I would say it's not as simple as saying there's a huge step up from 20 to senior. There's a huge step up in everything. And there's a huge step up in the personality. You need a certain type of personality to go at it.
Yeah, it's a few times
And
you've mentioned that, even the character of the Tyrone boys, because it's often said about younger players, and maybe every generation said this about younger players, but it's often said these days that they're very different people. Maybe it's smartphones, technology, who knows, but they're less vocal. Do you see very different types in the dressing room, or do we overstate that a touch?
I don't know. I think possibly, um, I think there's a bit of truth in that. And then I see other teams and I come across other teams, and let's just take that Tyrone team there for example. And no, I don't see that in them. I see a bit of I see a bit of cut in them, and I see a bit of want in them, and I see how important it is for them to win. And sometimes I don't see that elsewhere. And I've seen it commented on this year that maybe in Kerry the same importance isn't there. And I'm wondering, do they understand the history of, because history would be a big thing to me, and it's not everything, but I think it's part of it, and I think you can dip into it every now and again. And I'm wondering, is it there? Like, I think young people are different. I think society is different, and I think you have to come about it. And there's pluses and minuses to that. But certainly, when everybody says that all the young, I don't agree that all the young are I don't know what you'd say, gone soft, or you have to talk to them a different way, because I don't see it in other teams at times, and it's always the best teams, you know. You look at Limerick and what they did to Cork on Sunday, and you say, yeah, there was, it's just a bit of want and a bit of going back to the basics and digging deep, and that's good to see. I love seeing that stuff. And our lads were brilliant all year. They just came across a team. We created more, a lot more chances. We just didn't take them. So it was disappointing from that side of it. But I would agree that yeah, the youth today are different, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that's a bad thing either.
Do you, when it comes to Kerry football, have a certain vision in your mind? Do you see Kerry football played a certain way? Are there certain pillars that you think that's non-negotiable for me? That's Kerryness.
Yeah, and I think there's like, I've seen enough of it. I've seen like, I don't know, other young lads, and I always watched them. Like, I watched lads come in. Mike McCarthy, would just say, top off the top of my head, he didn't have any family that I know of that were playing. I just always admired fellas that were, say, I had two brothers. I had family at home, absolutely obsessed with it, and they would always push you on. They'd always be a shoulder to lean on, not in a soft way, but they'd tell you to cop on when you needed it. And I often wondered and looked at other fellas and said, how would they motivate themselves, or how do they get the drive, or how do they get to the level that they're at if they don't have that other support or somebody to push them along? But there are pillars in Kerry, and I think sometimes the outside would describe them. I saw them being described now in the Sunday game as lovely kickers of the game,
Well,
and I
it's
think,
funny when I asked the question. Sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned that. I see Paul Galvin head up, and that lovely kick pass up the line, which takes a hop and then is judged perfectly into the chest of a player. And I sort of think that's what people would think of with Kerry play.
yeah. But I'd ask you the question then, and Paul Galvin is a good example. What else does he bring to it?
Fight.
Because it is the full package.
Yeah.
If you don't have the full package, if you don't have the mix, if you don't have the players, there are certain teams. For me, the 70s team was one of them. They had the mix of everything. That Dublin team had the mix of everything. This Limerick team had the mix of everything. What I mean by the mix is the Tyrone team had it, where they have that mix of absolutely super talented footballers. They play the game with a good brand of football, head up, move it as quickly as you can, but they will get down and dirty when they need to. And I think it's just a mix. I think it's a mix. I think you'll always have teams that'll have superstars, and you'll have teams that, I think the great teams have a mix of everything.
Yeah.
And I think I was always like, you win a certain way, you lose a certain way. That's it. You make sure, and I felt it again last week. I'd be terrible company to be around. I can't take losing easily, and I find it way harder when I know that you're after leaving something behind or you have a regret about it. I cannot accept that at all, at all. And if you ask me, I think the pillars of Kerry in the history, there's tradition goes into it, there's a style of football that goes into it, there's a type of footballer that goes into it, there's a little bit of silk that goes into it, and there's a little bit of scumbag, as I said a long time ago, and fellas took it the wrong way.
Yeah.
That goes into it again. So it's the full package basically.
Yeah.
And there aren't two. You could name the teams off the United. Like it's in all sports, Joe. It's in all sports. You go through any team and you could pick out like John Small, for example, outstanding footballer, great footballer. John Small didn't give fellas that, and he was tough and he was hard. I'm not going to say he was fouling all the time. He wasn't, but John Small did what he had to do. Yet John Small was an excellent footballer, and they're hard fellas to find. Like, you know.
Yeah. And of the current pretenders to the throne, which team gives you that kind of that bite that you're talking about, that edge? Which team do you feel has that the most of the big 4 or 5 at the moment contending? Hard to judge from afar, but from afar.
It is, and I think one mistake we make all the time is we're very reactive on one round of league games,
Yeah.
I fall into it myself. I'd see Kerry play, and I'd come away and say, "Jesus Christ, we're not going to go near it this year." And I'd see whoever play, and next thing they come out and they rattle Dublin after losing to Meath, and they come out and they rattle Galway. Is there any team? I just there's something about the edge that the boys above in the north are playing with at the minute that jumps out at me. It's everything is at pace. They're so organised. They're so well drilled. You know, every aspect of the game, which leads into the new rules. They don't seem to get caught on long kickouts. They don't seem to get bothered by meeting 11 bodies up front. They just work around it. If they turn over a ball, they don't seem to get caught at the back like other teams do. They're just organised and set. Now, which team? I think I didn't expect Armagh to come as strong as they have. I didn't expect Armagh to be in the mix because I think it's a lot of stuff has gone on in the background. You're after coming from an All Ireland. I think I'd have desperate time for no matter what anybody says. McGeaney and McGuinness as managers and how they basically get their boys to give them forget the football they play just to give their best every single day. They're never beaten, and that attitude, I just like the edge that they have above there at the minute. Having said that, Kerry on their day, Galway on their day, and a lot of people are down in Galway this week. They'll all have a huge say in it. I just tuned into Fitzmaurice the last day, and he was saying it's a hard one to call. It's extremely hard, and it's brilliant. And I think the rules have lent their way with that. But right now, if you put my head in a block, I'd say I like what I see up north.
And one last one on the 20s, and then we'll get into some more of the current stuff. I was talking to a former teammate of yours, and I was just asking, Jack O'Connor's last year, who's in next? And he said, it's Tomás's job. It's Tomás's job when he wants it.
Ah, Jesus. No.
Are you doing this with a view to get the senior job at some stage, or what's your thinking?
I'll be honest with you, and you'll think I'm laughing or whatever. I'm not doing it with any. As far as I'm concerned, Jack is the manager of Kerry, and I'd say Jack could have the job as long as he wants. So I'm not even going to dream of it. You'd only be normal. You'd only be human. Like you'd be questioning yourself after the game, the last day, and say, were we good enough or could we have done more? And you'd be questioning yourself as a coach, you'd be questioning yourself as a manager, and you'd be questioning every sort of a thing. So no, right now I can tell you straight up, I wouldn't have any interest in a senior job. And on top of that then, as far as I'd be concerned, I wouldn't, I'd have too much respect for what the whole thing stands for to be disrespecting other people but I've no interest whatsoever in it.
Okay.
And I wouldn't I struggle, Joe, and people, I think, and I've only been managing under 20s, I'm telling you, that is like whatever anybody says, there's 10, 12 teams that you could name there, and there's pressure. Like you look at Desi Farrell, Pádraig Joyce, Jack Connor. Geez, it's an awful, like it's a full-time job. Like maybe it is what you take upon yourself, but it's constant, and things are going well, and that's grand. Things are not going well, and you'll be told fairly lively about it. So I think that has changed along the throughout the years. I don't remember it being like that when we were playing. I don't remember the same scrutiny. I don't remember the exact same kind of pressure being involved or the commitment being the same, to be quite honest with you. Because I always lived in Cork. I was always based in Cork. But management is completely different, like, because everybody's problem is your problem,
Yeah.
basically. And sometimes you're not a sociable, sometimes you're not a sociable guy. You're not in the best of form to deal with people, but you have to be. So, yeah.
Okay.
I'd have great time for those fellas who, like any manager who stays, like me. I don't know how McGeaney, he's an obsessive character, I know that, but how he has stayed, Mickey Hart, they've an unbelievable way about them. Like, the personality is so important, I think,
Yeah.
in a manager.
Well, I guess you've busy job, busy home
Um,
life as well. So, these are all big, big
oh,
things, It's good to talk to someone who's coached the new rules. So, what's that like?
it's good. I think it's good because it gives, first of all, it's a bit of energy. There's, don't, and anybody who tells you different, coaching fellas to break down 14 behind the ball was hard. And it was hard because then you're automatically saying, right, if we're going to be, and this is, you go back to the Kerry way and the pillars. It is not in Kerry's psyche to defend like that, no matter what. And I still don't think it's in their psyche, yet they have to do it. It
Yeah.
was never in their psyche. Kerry's psyche was play us straight up, and we mightn't be good as you, but teams, and rightly so, set up a different way and brought tactics that were, and I'd say sometimes still to this day, it's not that we're not being coached, but it's still not in our club game. It's still not in our heads. It's not in our DNA to
Mm.
be doing that kind of stuff. And I think it will have to change fully. And I'm not saying it hasn't changed. I think it has come around, but I still think there's a level above it that they need to reach, possibly. But I think the new rules are brilliant. I think that my favorite rule of the whole lot is the kick out. I think I know a lot of managers were giving out about the scrums, and I could see it. And it was winter football, and it was the pitches weren't as good as they are now. But watch it in these short few months. They're coming up. They're devising plans. They're making sure there's only two or three jumping for it. They're isolating players where people thought there was no space, and it'll only get better. You see Galway the last day, what they did with the short kick out. I think it's brilliant, and I think it makes teams, it does two things. It doesn't give teams an easy out to be able to set up their slow, methodical game. They
Mm.
have to bang it out. And also, it entices teams to push up. I haven't yet to seen off kickouts teams just drop off. No, they'll do it. They'll do it occasionally, and you can't. It's hard, but more often than not, it's the attacking. It's basically the rules. I think, Joe, are just there as an invite to play fast attacking football. And
Yeah.
if you look back, I can't remember the last time Kerry Cork, um, Donegal Armagh, you had Galway Dublin, you had the Lout game like there's 6 or 7 excellent games in the championship alone, and we
Yeah.
aren't even started.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since, don't get me wrong, I know you'll probably never reach the heights of a classic, and there's always seems to be 5 or 6 classic hurling games every year. I know, but I'd consider it a different sport anyway. But I'm telling you, I've never heard people, and you'll have managers and people kind of throw down that there was nothing wrong with the game the way it was. I'd beg to differ. There was something wrong with the game the way it was, and it's good to hear people talking about it. Don't get me wrong, plenty of things that you change still. And you'll talk about referees, you talk about handing the ball back, but I'd still take it any day of the week over the way it was. And if you rewind a few weeks, a few months, I don't know how long ago, the managers were giving out rec every weekend about them. And we were there saying, just get the rules down, get them down on paper, and the managers will go off and they'll deal with what they have, and they'll come out and give us the best version. And they probably have tweaks and all that. But I think the way it's been done, the way it's been sold, the way it's been explained, the way it's being coached now, I think players are coming in, players are enjoying it. Players are enjoying it. I think at 20 level more so, the same level of organisation isn't there. So that quick ball into the forwards is there more often than not. But I think it'll take a little bit of while, Joe, because they're still built into us, maybe to go backwards or
Yeah.
sideways or slow it down at times, but it's coming out, and I think we're having good football. I'm enjoying it anyway. I'm enjoying watching it.
Yeah, same. It's first time in a long time. It's been exciting to sit down and watch these games. You know, it's remarkable change. Um, Kerry are still the All Ireland favourites. That's what the money is saying anyway, albeit they're not like raging hot favourites. So we haven't talked too much about them on the show. The Cork game was great spectacle and went to extra time. And then against Clare in the Munster final, it was routine. And then what? They beat Roscommon by 10 points, kind of in third gear, last day out. So give us your pros, cons on Kerry at the moment. What's the feeling? What's the word? Because like I said, favourites for the All Ireland as things stand.
Yeah, but when I saw the draw for the qualifying stage here, I says, nah, as a player, if you look back and think as a player, you'd want something that would get you up for it. I think throughout time, back in our day, in particular, you didn't know where you were after coming out of Munster, and there was a good Cork team around at the time. But you'd come out of Munster and you literally didn't know, and you train as hard as you could, but you still didn't know where you were at. And it was only until that time it was Munster final, quarter final, and you get your test and you say, yeah, we're at it, we're okay. And then you'd go into semi final. You mightn't win it all the time, but you'd know where you were. But it was that quarter final that you'd be very fearful, and we might breeze through it, but you wouldn't know where you were. And I think this group will do something similar if it's the same. Like Kerry weren't on fire last year, yet they took care of Roscommon with 10 points to go. I don't know, and I'm not being disrespectful. The Cork should have beaten Kerry in normal time down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. But the biggest challenge to Cork, and the psychological challenge to Cork, is Cork seem find it very hard to back it up. And this weekend, nobody knows what Cork are going to throw up, and it's that kind of difficulty they face all the time. So I could see Kerry coming through this group, landing straight into a quarter final, and still not knowing where they are because their mettle hasn't been tested fully. They've had a league. I think they struggled very early on with the rules. I think they got to grips with that. And I think they've come out of that strong. I think they're developing a game that will be effective. They just need to get that little bit more consistency into their play. I think they have players playing well. And when I say, I'm not talking about every single game, there'll be lads who will have quiet games, but Paul Ganey is going very well. The two Cliffords are going outstandingly well. Shawnee is back and he seems fit and hungry. Diarmuid O'Connor, if he gets a break from injury, is going very well. Joe O'Connor's having an outstanding year. Brian Begley, Gavin White are actually going well. Jason Foley is playing well inside. And the bottom line is there's a lot more fellas playing well. I wouldn't say that last year.
Right.
And I don't think they'd say it last year. And yet, if you ask me, I'd still argue they should have beaten Armagh last year and they would have got to an All-Ireland final. So my general consensus is Kerry are in a good place. Kerry, I think and it's not a rules thing either, Joe. I just think there's more fellas playing well. I think they've come back with a little bit of hunger, but the ultimate litmus test will be further down the tracks. And to be fair, where they get that, they could get it anywhere. They could get it off Donegal, they could get it off Armagh, they could get it off Galway, they could get it off potentially a Dublin. So there's so many teams in it, Joe, that mightn't win an All Ireland, but could take you out along the way.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But I think there's more players. Like there's don't get me wrong, there's people talking, Kerry, and they'll always talk saying, we've issues with kickouts and we don't have a panel depth deep enough. But I think there's enough players. It's good to see Mike Breen going well. But to me, and it was the same way, the players used to talk the same way. We can't judge ourselves until we get that test. And
Yeah.
if they go straight to a quarter final, I think it could be a semi final. Like we did a 20 team, and I knew it. I was hoping Cork would give us a desperate test. You weren't going to get a test until and that eats me like that. That you don't get a second chance at that. You won't get a second chance when it matters most. And are Kerry capable of? I think they are. I think they're as capable as anybody else to win it. And I don't think the teams in the north will fear them because I think every top team, the 4 or 5 top teams, Joe, if they get set defensively well, then it'll come down to how you can break them down. And I just think that Kerry, one of the arguments you could have is with a forward line with Paul Ganey, who's as cute as a pet fox, the two Cliffords. You have lads who can open up, and it's good to see David playing well enough, even though he'll have quiet games, but he's always had games. I guarantee you the last day, if David was needed in that first half, he would have been there. He has a canny knack of putting the boot down when he needs to put the boot down. It was a quiet year last year for them, so I think they're all feeling that type of, yeah, we'll kind of hopefully prove what we're made of this year, and that's the way it's panning out at the moment. I'm not saying that they'll coast through this group that they're in currently, but I can't see anything other than Kerry qualifying. Like, they've already secured that by beating Roscommon. So your fear if you're management, that they won't be road tested enough, and will they be ready when they need to answer the questions? That's the only question that you'd have.
It's very interesting. What did you take then from Dublin with Tom Lahiff after they were kicking the winner in Salthill against Galway? Brilliant game. Like, again, as you were saying about the rules, like, fun to watch, but bit of life in the Dubs yet, maybe?
There is, yeah. And I'd still say, like, you rattle off names: O'Leary, Gavin, McGuinness, Branagh, Murphy, O'Cuffy, but they're not household names.
Nah,
They're not the Dubs they were.
People wouldn't recognise them.
Nah, and that doesn't mean that they're not capable, Joe, of doing what they did the last night, which they are, but they're also capable, and the argument will be thrown at them, they're also capable of doing what they did against Meath. And that's the issue. Like, they've lost so many players, and it wasn't going to go on, and it wasn't going to keep going. And what I like about them is Desi. Desi comes across as very, very calm on the sideline, and there's stuff inside in Desi, and you know that he's going to get a reaction. I didn't see that performance coming, I'll be honest with you. I didn't see, I knew there was going to be a reaction, but I didn't think, and I knew they could push Galway, but I expected Galway to win that game. But it was a huge win for Dublin. Do I still think they're All-Ireland contenders? I don't. For some reason, there's something in me that says no. Like, they still have a forward line, and when you think of Con, they'll need Con going well. Kilkenny gave a performance the last day, and you talk about what teams want to go after. Kilkenny, he bowled one fella over the sideline there with pure aggression. There was nothing skillful about it. It was pure aggression. It was pure want. It was pure hunger. He was setting the terms for everybody else. I get the sense that there's a great passing of the baton on in Dublin. This is the way you do things. You either toe the line here and kick into gear, or don't bother us and leave it off. He went up the field after throwing, who was it he threw over? Walsh, was it? He threw Walsh over the sideline. He went up, he was involved in the same attack about 6 or 7 seconds later as an option of he was running with the attack, and he was on the ball again. But what did it for me was, fast forward 7 or 8 seconds later, when the ball went over the bar, I think, he was sprinting back. He doesn't hide. He was sprinting back to make sure the kick out was covered. And you have fellas that do that. And if they're all on the same wavelength, if you have 13 or 14 fellas like that, then it covers up for the lack of so-called the star then is the team, like the star is a team. And they still have that little bit of silk, Brian Howard, Con, Kilkenny, but they're after losing. Like, you've Fenton is the jump out. Like, I think goalies from now on, Joe, as well. It's one thing with Cluxton. Cluxton is the greatest goalie, I think, of all times. He changed the way the game was played. He changed the way goalies kicked the ball out. He changed the way teams set up. It all came from him, right? But the new rules don't suit him because he's relying more on the outfield players than he's ever did before. The last day, Dublin did a lot better in the middle of the field, but it wasn't because, now don't get me wrong, he kicked 3 or 4 excellent kickouts and he picked them out, he dipped it over fellas' heads, but the bulk of them were just hanging in the right area. That's it. So that was his job. That wasn't as detailed as before. And the difference was you had O'Coffey Byrne, and you had other lads on the carpet ball that were a lot sharper than they were when they lost to Meath. So, look, Dublin are still there. Do I expect them to win in All-Ireland? I don't. Did I underestimate them the last day? Possibly. But if you're Galway, you'd be disappointed with the last day.
Yeah, that's all really interesting, Dublin. With Cluxton, he must almost be thinking when he's just hanging them in a certain spot without the kind of precision of previous years, he must be thinking, this is like, I do this with my eyes closed. Like, this is all like, I'm reduced to this. Like, he's probably thinking my wand of a left foot is reduced to just hanging them up for Con to come back and get up in the air. This is a joke.
And maybe if you're, then maybe they have to go back to the drawing board. I'd say the amount of teams, Joe, that have gone back to the drawing board at different times during the league, and it's only natural. We all said it. Well, anybody would have a bit of sense. Give it this a year before things just get a pattern and fellas, get a run on things and how. Because we struggled, and I'm only looking at it from a coaching point of view. The way we were approaching things at the very start compared to the way we were approaching them towards the end, we only had 1 kick out at the start of the year, but come the end of it, you had 3 or 4.
Okay.
And that was like that's. The senior teams will focus the same. Like I've seen, one of the stats we've had stats and matches where you can now actually get wiped out in the middle of the park and still win the game.
Right.
It's not the be all and end all.
Right.
It's stats are read differently than they were as well with the new rules. I think the 11 up as well, Joe. Like I think there was a lot of talk about it. It was a great move, and I know they didn't. The way they put it, keeping the goalie back was proper order. It doesn't matter. Goalies are still getting up there, and you'll get the Northern lads who'll still go out and more luck to them. They're actually excellent at it. They're brilliant at it. But I think the right decision was made with 11v11 because it'll entice the defending team to come out that bit more and attack and put pressure on because they know that they're not going to be caught out with a simple pass because of a +1 outside.
Yeah.
I think that was a key one, and I think it's been lost in the last few weeks, but that was a very, very important change.
So you were just going on to Galway there, and if you look at Galway as All-Ireland contenders, that's the only way they see themselves. That's how we have to judge them. They're obviously a very good team, but we're talking about All-Ireland winning team potentially or not. The form line here is quite worrying because Mayo take them to within a kick of a game, and we'll come on to Mayo in a second. That's not a good Mayo team at the moment. And then at home against Dublin in the sunshine, Shane Walsh back. If you're kind of thinking this Galway team's going to win in All-Ireland, they'll be saying to themselves, that's a game we should be winning. Like that's a bad statement here. That is worrying.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think and you could sense Pádraig Joyce was cranky after the game. You could sense look, it comes back to the point I was making earlier on, Joe. I think, and this is where I'd question Galway. I'd basically questioned them up front, inevitably, because Thompson is a huge find, and he's a young lad, and he's very good, and he's going to be seriously good. But for Galway to win in All-Ireland, they'll need Finnerty going well, they need Walsh going very well. And like Walsh can be a player on his day that can destroy teams. But in another way, then he can have an off day. You don't have Comer. There's no consistency with the forward line that they have. They have big physical men outside. They will win ball. They're well organised. And I'm not writing them off at all. But they are knocking on the door for the last number of years. They'll be disgusted the way, like they've got two of the last 3 All-Ireland finals?
Yeah.
Nothing but an All-Ireland final will be enough for them right now. But you're right in saying that Mayo should have beaten them. If they'd taken their chances, Mayo should have beaten them. So there's still a question mark. And I don't think after the Mayo game, that was a huge relief to them above. They're after winning 4 Connachts in a row. Sure, the natural thing and the only thing that will satiate Joyce and his team, forget the Galway public for a second, is an All-Ireland. And you'd worry, is there a little bit too much pressure on them trying to achieve that? And is there a little bit? The main thing for them now is they have two more games, and they're in a tough group. There's no doubt about that. But I think it'll either bring the best out in the team, and they'll react to it, which I think they will. I think they're too good a team not to. I think they're a huge physical team. But I still think that they would need to be have that fear to have they got that fear factor up front as much as other teams have. Maybe they do. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. But I think that is an area where ultimately they'll need to fire like. And
Yeah.
it's like David Clifford being able to, or whoever it is, Michael Murphy, whoever it is. There's only 3 or 4 teams, Joe, that'll ask the questions of the top teams. So you mightn't see it early on in the year, and there might be fellas coasting along and doing very, very well. And the next thing, bang, you hit a wall. Jesus, what happened there? Yeah, like it's good enough to beat 85% of the teams, but it's the 15%
Yeah.
that are the important ones. And I think Galway will be rattled after the last day. And I think they'll answer it the right way, though. I think they have enough quality to answer it the right way.
Yeah. The Shane Walsh point is very interesting. Like even on Saturday evening with the socks pulled up, maybe that's what put it in my mind. But I did think like he's almost the centre point of this whole attack in the way that Kieran McDonald was a bit for Mayo. And it's like all his teammates are aware of him and where he is, and they'll give it to him that bit quicker if he's on for something. And so if he's having a good day, as you say, geez, it's frightening. And he'll kick 2-pointers and he'll pull off Hail Marys and he'll be phenomenal. But if he's not firing, then that's trickier for Galway, and they'll probably malfunction worse than other teams. But like, geez, he's so good, and he's only just getting his body back. Like, do you think Joyce is going to persevere and say, do you know what, I'm putting chips on Shane Walsh here because I think he's going to come good, or do you think he'll look at it and say, this is a bit too precarious, like there's too much based on whether he's in the mood or not?
Yeah, I'd fully agree. I don't think they rely on him as much, and I think Joyce has done very well in that. I don't think they rely on him. Joyce would say things in the media afterwards, and he'd whip fellas off straight away. And um, I think he has no problem being blunt with players when they need it. And I think Shane Walsh understands. Um, my worry for Shane Walsh, okay, you have Paul Conroy outside who will kick scores.
Yeah.
McDade will always pop up with a couple of scores. Finnerty will pop up with a couple of scores. Thompson seems to be ticking along. So you have scorers. You're not fully relying on Shane Walsh. But I think what you're trying to say is if Shane Walsh goes off trying to prove a point, then he's hurting Galway ultimately if he's trying to play his own game.
Unless he's pulling it off, in which case, have at it. You're amazing.
Yeah. But how many times, like he'll do magic things in games, and the argument will be made, and I'm not just pointing this at Shane Walsh, the argument will be made at a lot of fellas. Like, I think, say, it's something that's not given enough credit. Well, Clifford will create as much as he will score himself as well, and he doesn't seem to be bothered. And maybe Walsh is the same, Joe. Maybe we're being hard on him here, but if Galway get that balance right where Walsh, and he needs to get game time
Yeah.
consistently, and he gets back, like Walsh can reach heights that other players can't.
Yeah.
But it's to get that consistency into it.
And
I haven't seen the level of consistency with
no,
him.
and like his
Well
body's
done.
killed. His body's killed him. But like, it's probably just a tough thing for these great players. Like there are times where you've watched Clifford in big games, and he almost feels like, oh, there's a bit of a shot on here. I sort of better shoot. Like I'm the main man, and he takes it on. And if it doesn't go well, and then he tries another one, and then suddenly the crowd are up against him, and the other team are feeding off it, and becomes kind of a vicious cycle. But like I sort of think these are the great players, and you have to give them license to go out there and win a big game. You know, I feel some of the criticism of Shane Walsh is a bit harsh. Like he's only just getting back a bit of credit in the bank. Like last year against Dublin, look what he did basically on one leg. You know what I mean? Kick crucial scores, amazing.
But Joe, like you talk about Shane Walsh, you talk about all the great forwards, right?
Yeah.
All the great forwards. It's when they play off the cuff that they play their best football, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's when they do, and the problem is with that then is they can do that, and Clifford will do it.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't do it often enough.
Yeah.
The problem is when they do miss, then they're hammered and they're saying, why didn't you recycle it, or why didn't you? And maybe they're not hammered from within, but they're hammered from without.
Yes.
And then you'll feel that pressure from the outside, and you'll have media asking questions, and maybe that's not the dynamic whatsoever inside. Maybe he's told, Shane, you get an opportunity, you go for it, and you keep backing yourself, because you have to back them. You have to back the fellas who can give you something different. Because if your plan is just one way, then ultimately, unless you're well ahead of a team on a given day, they'll figure you out, and they'll it's the unpredictable stuff that causes defenders bother,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you
and
know. So,
it's
and
it's
he can give you that.
it's tricky dynamic as well, because I'm sure if you're in Joyce's situation, you sort of want to say, listen, you have license, you're amazing, I love you. You want to keep his confidence high. To some extent, you want to get a message to him, but look, if it's not going well, then maybe don't try like a 50 metre off your left. You know what I mean? Have a bit, see how it's going. By the same token, Loud, Mulroy in the Leinster final has a really tricky period, but he keeps going, he keeps shooting. These are all the things that play with a top player that you have to try and indulge and give a bit of license to. And yeah, it'd be fascinating to see how
Yeah,
it plays that out.
there's nothing worse if you start forcing it, or you start trying to make it happen, and then it just goes pear-shaped
Yeah,
altogether. But I think he'll have. I think if he stays injury free, if he gets a little bit of momentum going, I would back him to do well. But I think you talk to the people of Galway who are watching it and seeing him week out, week in, week out. The what could be thrown at him is this just the consistency
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
And they're probably that little they would have been in a good place, Joe. Get a win in Salthill against Galway. You would have upped the pressure on Dublin with two tough games coming. It just throws the dynamic of the group. And there's only, like we spoke about the group in Kerry, where, there probably will be excitement, but it probably won't involve Kerry, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Whereas in this group, geez, anything could happen in this group still.
yeah.
You have tough teams in it. And look, I wouldn't be worried about Galway. They're going to qualify. It's just, they have to get I'd say the next game is the big one for them, you know?
One last team I want to touch on briefly, and we'll wrap it up, is Mayo, who were beaten by Cavan, 117 to 114. And a slightly deceptive scoreline as well, because Mayo hit 1-2 late on, like the last kick of the game was a goal. So really, heading into the finish, they were 8 points off Cavan in Castlebar. A year ago, they played Cavan and they won by 9 points. It's a precipitous fall in the space of a year. And even last year, the crowd who turned up at that game, kind of 9,000-10,000. They're down a few thousand fans this year. It just feels like the air has kind of gone out of this thing. And now they have to go to Oma and probably get a result against Tyrone. They have Donegal then in a neutral venue. They're probably hoping Donegal are resting players and have already qualified. But they can't just get one win, because Cavan will have them on head-to-head then. They have to get a win and a draw minimum. 1 point from play from the starting six forwards until that O'Shea goal late on. What do you think's kind of gone on here with Mayo? It's a massive fall off.
Yeah, maybe. Look, maybe there's too much expectation with Mayo. Maybe, maybe the same thing happened to Tyrone when they started to fall off the scene after their great team. There was a lot of expectation, and maybe they just have to realize that right now they don't have the players, and you couple that then with the constant pressure that seems to be around the Mayo squad and the Mayo management, which I think is wrong. It doesn't seem to be a great place to be. Now, again, Joe, it might be different, completely different on the inside. We don't know. I haven't a clue.
Yeah.
But like Mayo, throughout the years, and it was, I don't know, I definitely would say nobody created as many chances as Mayo. They just had battling qualities. I still think they have that battling qualities. But in terms of just absolute scoring up front, I don't think they threaten. I don't think they strike fear into teams. I don't think from a defensive point of view, you wouldn't be scared of them. You stick with them. Like Cavan played one game in the championship this year, a good few weeks ago, and they got a right good hosing. If you were setting up against Cavan, you say, "My God, right? They're after losing. They're after getting hammered. They weren't as bad as that." And the performance they gave against Tyrone, they weren't as bad as that, but they were convincingly beaten. compared to what they were doing in the league. So Cavan were better than what people might perceive them after that Tyrone performance.
Right.
So they had a month to get themselves right with a bit of hurt, and they were going to come all guns blazing. So you would imagine that Mayo would have been right ready for that, and wherever else you'd have to match them in terms of intensity and aggression. And I just thought that Cavan were just a way more direct, a way more pace involved, and geez, it's like everything, Joe. Sure, it's easy, mark fellas that go sideways with it and backwards or whatever. And I'm not saying they have different options, but it just seems that Mayo don't really know themselves where they're at, and you have former Mayo players maybe in the media questioning everything that's happening and why is Aidan O'Shea playing where he is and why isn't he out the field, and maybe they're relying on too many older players. Maybe the younger players are struggling to find a footing there. Maybe there's too much chopping and changing. They have talent, and they've plenty of talent coming in underage, but I don't know have they the right talent in the right areas to make an impact,
Yeah.
which is
It,
upfront.
it was
When's
even
the
a,
last?
yeah, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes either, but one of the strange things ahead of this year was when Killian O'Connor, who's what, mid-30s now or getting there, said,
Yeah,
not that he's retiring, taking a year out. You don't take a year out
I
at his
know it's strange.
age. You don't take a year out at his age. You retire or you keep going because you're running out of time.
Yeah,
Second I heard
yeah,
that several months ago, I thought something's wrong here.
yeah. And I don't know. You don't really seem to hear, and I don't know what's going on in the background. I don't know what kind of a setup they have.
Yeah,
Is it to do with management? Is it to do with the players themselves? Is it that the players aren't there? Is it that it's one thing saying the players aren't there. We've seen Mayo give flashes in this league, Joe, where they have been impressive, and they have they have hurt teams. They've been well organised. They've been a bite to them, but I didn't see that the last day whatsoever.
right.
Um, there's like go back to the Galway Dublin game. Yeah, Galway hit Mayo as hard as they could after half time, got a little bit of luck, got 1-2, I think, rattled them. Dublin came back and Dublin kept the scoreboard ticking over. That wasn't there with Mayo. That confidence, or that, right lads, we're sticking to the game plan. We're doing the simple basic things right here again, and we have our formula, let's keep at it. And I don't think that was there. And I think what that game is after doing to Mayo, Joe, is just after heaping a whole more pile of pressure,
Yeah,
because yeah, and without anything else, even the crowds, you said it there, the crowd compared to last year, the same edge and the same bite isn't around them. But maybe as I said at the start, maybe there's too much expectation around Mayo. I wasn't, to be honest with you, I didn't expect Mayo. I didn't expect Mayo to go far this year.
true,
That's
true,
just me
true.
personally, and that's
No, no one
not, I
did.
don't mean
Yeah,
that in a derogatory way, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't still be able to mind their own patch in Connacht and win a Connacht title, which they were very, very close to doing. But I don't think, and when I say I don't think they're in the conversation for All Ireland honours, and haven't been for the last number of years.
no, no. So it's just that they're almost still winding down. You're wondering how far it's going to fall off before they come up again nearly. That was great. Super to get your thoughts on all this, and great to have you along for the rest of the season, Tomás. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks.